Thank you, Minister, for coming into the Shannon today to address this important issue and to hopefully provide some much-needed clarity to parents and those involved in the Educate Together schools. While my question relates to Castlebar Educate Together National School, I am aware of the difficulties and the commonalities in Tuam, Tramore, New Ross and Trim. Minister, many parents feel that you are trying to fix a problem that simply does not exist. All 5 schools have demonstrated pre-enrolment numbers for 2018-19 to accommodate a full stream and have expressed frustration and anger at the prescribed barriers to further development being applied by the Department of Education so late in the school year. These schools never opened to remain as half-stream schools, and indeed some opened with more than 13 students. Castlebar Educate Together and New Ross Educate Together National School were 2 of those. At no stage in the establishment of any of the 5 schools currently in this situation did the Department of Education suggest to Educate Together that they would remain as half-stream and non-developing schools, as was outlined in recent correspondence. This correspondence appears to directly contradict the agreed terms upon which these schools opened. At no time did the Department of Education say that the numbers were to be capped at 13. This was always a minimum requirement. The decision now means that parents are faced with splitting up their families, and one parent I spoke to this morning has 2 children. One started in Educate Together last year and had a most enjoyable experience through the year. His second child is due to start in September, and he has been told that there won't be a place if the numbers continue to be restricted, and this just doesn't make sense. The uncertainty attached to carrying out a review will obviously influence the decision of parents as to where they send their children for the next school year. In a letter from the Department of Education, it was stated that national demographic exercises are to be carried out at a primary and post-primary level to identify areas of demographic growth. But this has already been done and submitted to the Department by Educate Together. So why would you seek to have the same work done again? And I'd ask the question, when is this duplicate report due to be completed, and when will its recommendations be implemented? It's also a question about choice, both for parents who want their children to attend a religious ethos school and those who prefer non-denominational educational settings. Most of all, it's about getting clarity for these parents. Without this clarity, it's impossible for them to make proper choices regarding their children's education. Minister, in your programme for government, you stated we need a dynamic and innovative education system that reflects the diversity of 21st century Ireland. We will strengthen parental choice and diversity in our school system, reflecting the need in modern Ireland for new forms of multi-denominational and non-denominational education, while also safeguarding the rights of parents to send their children to denominational schools that offer a distinct religious ethos, should they so wish. That's what you said in your programme for government. I know that the relationship between Castlebar Educate Together and other national schools in the area is healthy, productive and inclusive. These schools were set up in urban areas where there will be no effect on the local existing schools. The idea that the state must intervene and force parents to choose a religious education in order to preserve a balance among all schools in an area and to ensure that one school is not expanding at the expense of another is not the type of rationale one would expect in a democratic republic. Is it, Minister?
Thank you, Senator. Minister.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the Senator for raising this. The background to this comes well before my time. It was back in 2012 when there was a report of an advisory group to the Forum on Patronage and Pluralism in primary sector, and it recommended that demand for patronage diversity should be met in areas of stable population by divesting patronage of existing schools where there is evidence of parental demand for change. And in this context, the Department undertook surveys in 43 areas. It was done under a divesting process put in place by Rory Quinn at the time, and in 28 areas, including Castlebar, sufficient demand for more choice was established. Now, it was always conditional in the divesting process of property becoming available from existing schools. So the the establishment of the Castlebar Educate Together National School as a 4-classroom school has its origins in this report, which indicated a size of at least half a single-stream school comprising 4 classrooms being required to accommodate parental demand in the area. Under the patronage divesting process, the school could be opened where a building became or was due to become available as a result of an amalgamation closure of an existing school. In some areas, in responding to demand for diversity, where existing patrons were unable to make school properties available, the department also included an examination of properties held in public ownership. And I think that was the background in Castlebar, where a school was suggested, but it was deemed unsuitable. And in that case, a property owned by Mayo County Council, the Marsh House, from the council, and that the department arranged for refurbishment works to be undertaken in that facility to allow Castlebar ET to operate from there and to provide 4 classrooms and ancillary accommodation of the school. Now, it is a general policy of the department that schools, irrespective of their location, have to operate within their available accommodation and manage annual pupil intake accordingly. The initial establishment of Castlebar as a 4-classroom school and the need to be cognizant of managing the available accommodation has been reflected in the department's engagement with the patron body of this school. When the school raised the issue of expanding its enrolment, my department invited Educate Together to submit a case to the department in this regard. Expanding the enrolment of the school would mean that the accommodation which is currently provided would no longer be suitable. A case has been submitted by Educate Together to further expand Castlebar Educate Together National School and 4 other schools under the patronage of ET, which opened under this patronage divesting process. As you say, they're New Ross, Trim, Tuam, Tramore, and this is currently under consideration within my department. As you also said, my advertisement to the department is carrying out a nationwide demographic exercise. Now, you ask, is this duplicating work by Educate Together? This work is done by the department based on the very best databases available in the country. It looks at 314 separate planning areas. It uses up-to-date data on child benefit, on school enrolments, on preschool enrolments, and so on. So it is a very sophisticated piece of if you like, forecasting. It also sits down with the local authorities to assess from them their projected developments of properties or housing developments in the area, so they can factor that in. So this isn't a question of Educate Together providing data and the department seeking some way to duplicate. This is a planning exercise that's done in every single of 314 planning areas, and it's designed just as I was speaking to Senator Murnane O'Connor. It's designed to make sure that we anticipate the areas of need and plan for the new schools in the areas of expansion and have, as you know, a patronage exercise where parents decide what would happen in that event. I absolutely fully agree with you that what we need to do is respond to the changing nature and makeup of this country, and what I'm doing that is across a range of issues. We're reforming the admissions bill, where my intention is that religion would not be used as a criterion in selection in the vast majority of schools. I'm making new provision that children who do not want to participate in religious instruction but are in a denominational school will have clear programmes, and it will be stated in the admission policy what those are. I'm seeking to introduce a Parents and Students Charter, which will be legislation. And I'm also, I suppose, to go back to the issue of patronage, I think we'd have to say that the initiative that was put in place back in 2012, which was this divesting based on amalgamations and closure, it has proved a very inflexible model, and it has, I think, only generated 10 cases in its period. And what I am looking at a new approach to try to encourage the patronage transfer, and that was the original proposal of the patronage group, to see patronage transfer from existing schools to new. The new approach that I'm proposing would see live transfers, so a school would transfer from an existing patron to a new patron without requiring closure, amalgamation. So we're hoping that that will be an easier system to adopt. It will be done through surveys by the ETB, the local-based, community-influenced, if you like, Education Training Board. But just on the substantive point, my department are reviewing the requests from Educate Together. But that's the background. And I suppose, you do make the point, but I suppose generally the department's policy has been, if there's one very popular school in an area and it's growing very rapidly, they don't provide for the growth of a very popular school if just in neighbouring schools, not so popular, there's empty places. That has been, I suppose, a restriction simply of money. We don't have the ability to build schools where we've empty places elsewhere. So that's been the general policy. It's not a special policy to some way disadvantage Educate Together. But as I say, we will review this particular submission that's made to us.
Minister, supplementary.
Yeah, Minister, I just want to ask you when that review will be completed and the recommendations implemented. I take what you're saying, but I think there's a, you've said there in reference to transferring patronage that we have to be honest and admit they haven't worked. But I do think we also need to be honest and admit that the Educate Together schools do appear to be working, and that they are demand-led and they are what parents and what families want in these areas, and I think it speaks for themselves. And in Article 42 of our Constitution, it says that the state shall not oblige parents in violation of their conscience and lawful preference to send their children to schools established by the state or to any particular type of school designated by the state. So on legal grounds, therefore, these restrictions would need to be lifted with immediate effect and buildings provided to allow these schools to cater for growing demand that exists in this inclusive school model. And I take what you're saying, nobody wants to see a school that's left without pupils or pupils being reduced in it. But these areas were specifically picked as urban areas where you would have the numbers of children there. And I really feel that we need to, whatever review is to be carried out, it needs to be done in a very timely way and those recommendations implemented. But within that review as well, Minister, I think it's crucially important that speaking to the local authority and speaking to the other bodies, speak to the parents and the families who are most affected by this. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Briefly, Minister.
No, well, first of all, I'd say there is a huge surging demand for non-denominational schools, but we start from a starting point where 95% of schools are denominational, and the state honours its commitment to provide free primary education through that structure, 95% denominational. Now, the constitutional provision is that no child should be forced to take religion in their class. There isn't a provision that says every parent should get the school of their choice. That, unfortunately, is not a provision and probably would be very unworkable. I fully acknowledge the quality of the Educate Together model. I'd also commend the First Patrúnachta and the Gaelscoil model, and also the ETB's Community National School. These are all multi-denominational models with different approaches, but all of them are excellent in their approach, and I strongly commend them. Indeed, virtually every primary school, new primary school, which I have built and which my colleagues before me have built, have gone to non-denominational patrons. So there's no question about parental preference. I suppose what we're seeking to do is to get a transfer of patronage. That was the model that was driving this, transfer of patronage. The old model was by amalgamation and divestiture, selling off, has proved difficult to deliver. We're hoping that, complemented by a new model, we can get greater progress. But on this specific situation of the schools who went in and who developed under that model, I will look at the case being put forward. I can't say at this point when that review will be complete, because I think the department will obviously have to see the demographic numbers in each area to bear that in mind, as well as issues around the feasibility of accommodation solutions and so on, and what is the nature of available space elsewhere. Ideally, of course, we would like to see patronage transferred to new patrons, including in areas such as these. But I thank the Senator for raising this, because I do know it's an issue of particular concern to parents, and we will take their concerns seriously.
Thank you very much, Minister.